Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to Focus on Health. I'm your host, Peggy Mello. Today's guests are Marie Warda and Kristine Lindahl from MVP Healthcare. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thanks, Peggy.
Marie, why don't we start with you? Do you want to talk about what you do for MVP Healthcare?
Well, Peggy, I've been with MVP Healthcare for a few years, and I'm part of the Health Promotion Department. Our department focuses on health and wellness for the general community and as well as our members. I am by profession a registered nurse for more years than I want to even talk about right now, but I also am a certified case manager, so I do deal with a lot of health conditions. I've been doing health education for many, many years, over 15, 20 years now, in various capacities, and I was really pleased to be able to be part of this department because our whole focus is on making sure that our members in the general community have the information and knowledge and resources to take on life and live well.
Good. Okay, Kristine?
I'm a community health educator at MVP Healthcare, also part of the Health Promotion Department, and I come to this work by way of several years as a professional dancer and then a certified professional fitness professional, and now I'm kind of putting all of those pieces together and offering all kinds of ongoing fitness programs and wellness presentations in the capital region here in this part of the state.
Excellent. Okay, so there's a lot of ways that we think of memory. Memory is such a story from our childhood. It's let's see, what did I have for breakfast yesterday? What's my cell phone number? Marie, can you give us an exact definition of memory?
Oh boy. Well, memory is really a complex process that involves different areas of our brain that brings everything together and recalls information from various parts of our brain, from experiences that we've learned or things that we've experienced. Now, memory comprises of both short and long-term memory. Short-term memory is exactly what it sounds like. It is very fragile. It only lasts for a few seconds or a few minutes. You may think of short-term memory as someone giving you a phone number, you dial the phone number, and you're done. You can put that number out of your mind.
Right.
So that, again, short-term memory, again, as I mentioned, is very fragile. That's because there's so many things that we have to remember throughout a day, and if we memorized too many things, our brains would be on overload.
Right.
So on average, short-term memory can hold about 7 things. That's all the researchers that have come up with that number. Now, long-term memory relates to things that typically we've experienced over time or are very important to us, perhaps have more of an emotional component. And again, things that we've learned over our lifetime. And typically, again, that information is very meaningful to us. Now, within long-term memory and short-term memory, there's some other things that we need to think about with memory. One of them is explicit memory, or very factual in nature. It's the way we look at our world and all those facts that surround us as we increase in our age.
Okay.
An example of that would be, what color a lemon is.
Right.
That's part of your long-term memory. You've always known what color a lemon is, and it's yellow. So it's not something that you have to really think about. It's just been ingrained in your life. You know what the difference is between a cat and a dog. There's also some other types of memory. One of them is called episodic. And again, that relates to your personal memories. Things like the day your child was born, things like when you got married, you know that date. Things that are very meaningful, you typically will remember dates. There's another type of memory, and it's called procedural memory. Now this one is, have you ever used the phrase, I'm on autopilot driving home? You know how to get from point A to point B.
Okay,
you don't
so
have to really think about it.
It's a daily routine.
It's a daily routine, exactly.
Okay.
It's information that you're really required to retain, and you concentrate a little bit more on it. So Those memories can be as simple as knowing how to tie your shoes because you learned it when you were 5 and you've had to do it for many, many years.
Right.
Or it's as complex as setting up for a worker a punch press in a job. They know the procedure of start to finish of setting up their
Right.
job. And it, again, by matter of routine and repetition, they remember that. Those memories, again, like we said, are relatively routine, and you don't have to do a lot of thinking about it. Now, episodic memories really relates to personal memories or things that have a significant impact for you and usually have an emotional component. And I'm not sure if any of you can think about that, but there's a couple of things that most of us always know.
Right.
And depending on your age, if you ask someone, especially an older adult, where were you the day Kennedy was shot?
Right.
They will be able to tell you very clearly exactly where they were.
I was thinking of 9/11, but yes,
Well, that's the,
you know
that's
what you
the
were doing.
next
the other one.
example. For those who
Yeah.
are younger, that may be the most impactful thing that has happened in their life.
Right.
And so as we age, and those younger people age, they will always remember where they were that day.
Okay.
So again, that's that other piece of memory, and that's why you retain it.
Excellent. Now, what are the stages of memory? Can you please explain those?
Now, the stages of memory, they're a process, and they're not really that complicated, but there's a few things. First of all, we have to acquire our information. And that's the stage where the information enters our brains through pathways that are called neurons. And we won't get into a lot of detail about that. We may touch on that a little bit later, but basically that's when the brain encodes the information or locks it into
Okay.
an area, and it's processed in the brain. And you really do need a little bit of effort to remember that, so it sort of doesn't fly in one ear and out the other. We've always heard that phrase. You have to
Yes.
take a little bit of concentration to remember and encode it. The next piece of memory is called consolidation, and basically you need to concentrate a little bit on a particular memory so that you can remember it. Very often there can be an emotion attached to it, or there can be a reason why you have to remember something. So that could be as simple as you're taking a test and you're required to know your multiplication tables. Or if you're taking a certification exam or a college course, you're required to know certain bits of information. So you put them to memory, and you spend a little bit more time on that. Lastly, memory also involves retrieval. And basically it's, where did you put this stuff? Think about your computer, and you can store a lot of information on a computer, but if you don't remember where you put it, you may never be able to pull it back out. Luckily, our computers have search engines, and in essence, our brains have search engines too, but they have to be healthy. So when you need to find information, it's searched in your long-term memory. And because as adults, we have memories over our lifetime, it has to sort through all of those other memories and eliminate ones that aren't necessary and find the right piece that we really need. So again, you really need to search for that memory in your brain, and all the other things are then filtered out. So it's a whole process that you go through.
Very interesting. Now, Kristine, do you want to talk about how aging affects memory?
Surely. There are a few ways that age does affect our memory physiologically. One is there's a structure in the brain called the hippocampus, which is very important. It's a very important link in the brain that helps us do the processing of information into our memory. And this is the most, it's the structure in the brain that's the most vulnerable to aging. There's also, as we age, we tend to lose neurons. So there is this affects the activity of our brain chemicals. And thirdly, as we age, there tends to be a decrease in the flow of blood to the brain. And also, we tend to process the nutrients that help enhance brain activity less efficiently and effectively as we get older. So those are age-related kind of negative effects. But the good news is that there's a whole lot about our memory that's not affected as we get older. So would you like to hear about those?
Sure.
And this is exciting, and a lot of people don't really understand that, oh my goodness, these things, as we get older, don't have to be affected.
Okay.
Normal routines, getting up, eating, drinking, all of the activities of daily living are not necessarily negatively affected at all as we get older.
Okay.
Wisdom, all of that acquired knowledge that we have over a lifetime, our professional expertise,
Right.
all of that kind of knowledge that we gather through all of our working years. Things like listening, our ability to listen and take in information, and then our ability to give advice, really hear what someone's saying and give advice based a lot on a lifetime's worth of expertise. These are not negatively affected as we get older. Innate common sense, answering the phone and the door when the bell rings, helping someone on who's struggling getting a coat on, something like that. Those kinds of things are not affected. Our ability to form arguments and judgments, coming up with questions as to why something costs this much, or figuring out why you're going to pick this food over another food. All those kinds of mind and brain activities are not affected by age.
Okay, but what about learning? Can you take a class at 80 and still learn like you can at 30?
Absolutely, and that's really one of the most exciting things of all. You can learn new tricks at any age.
At any age.
At any age.
The only thing that's different about learning as we age is that sometimes it just takes a little bit longer to get it into our brain. We never stop learning. It just may take us a little bit longer to actually become confident with the information and to keep it ingrained into our memories.
But I'm imagining also the type of learning depends on the age that you are too. I mean, they say that your language learning is best when you're 8 or 9 years old. Is it more difficult when you're 70 or 80 years old?
Well, I would say yes, it could be more difficult for some individuals. Typically, an individual who's older, who wants to learn a new language, is empowered and excited about that prospect. So therefore, they're going to focus more, concentrate more, and take more time to learn those skills and techniques. So therefore, it's, again, we talked before about that emotional attachment. They have that desire and they want to do that. So it's more possible for an older adult who wants to learn rather than an older adult who's required to learn. As an example, if I was told I had to learn Spanish today, although I would love to do it, unless I had an impetus to do it, like I was moving to Mexico or some other Spanish-speaking country,
Right.
I may not have the big desire, so I may only put in the effort that I need to, and I may not retain it very long. If I know I'm going to be using the language, I certainly would be more apt to spend more time and really do the repetition to, again, make sure that I consolidate that information, encode it into my brain, and that I can then retrieve it when I need it.
Right. Now, I'm imagining that one's physical condition affects memory, whether you have a particular disease, whether you're taking medication. Can you go more into that?
Yes, I can, Peggy. All of those things affect memory. There's environmental issues that affect our memory, things that you don't really think about. There's been a lot in the news about lead paint and the effects that it has on children. For younger brains, especially, the ingestion of lead is very important to their development process. So that's a really important thing for parents or grandparents to think about if there's lead or lead dust in their homes. Other environmental conditions can be as simple as carbon monoxide. Again, we're luckily getting out of the winter season and into the spring season. We may not need our heaters on in our homes, but that does affect people. So if someone's home has a carbon monoxide leak, that could affect their brain chemistry and their ability to be able to think clearly. What happens is the carbon monoxide, in essence, pushes out the oxygen, and you no longer can oxygenate your brain properly. So that's a very, very important piece. Medications can cause all kinds of problems for anybody with memory.
Right.
There are actually some particular medications that are specifically to have a lack of memory. Those are typically offered in a hospital setting, let's say when you're going through surgery. They help relax you, and you tend to just not have a particular memory about something that isn't as positive. But also there's medications that can cause excessive drowsiness. And that's very, very important to recognize that the things that when you're not as sharp as you would like to be can also affect your memory. So it's really important to speak to both your physician or your pharmacist about medications that you're planning on taking to see how it might affect you. Again, depending on your age, they may affect you more than others. Alcohol and drug abuse are two other areas that consistently can affect memory and the way that you're able to process your memory. There is particular limits for alcohol, and again, I won't go into those in detail. Your doctors, I'm sure, have also spoken with any individual about the amount of alcohol that they should consume. But moderate alcohol is usually okay, but when you get into excessive alcohol, drinking every day on a regular basis, that can really affect your whole processing.
Now, is that a long-term effect? Or is
Yes.
that short term?
No, typically if someone is drinking to excess over a long period of time, you can have some, again, more long-term and or permanent effects. Illegal drugs are another thing, that can affect the mind in general. Back in the 60s, LSD was a real big one. Unfortunately, that's made a comeback. That can affect brain chemistry also for younger people and older people. Marijuana and cocaine can also affect the processing in blocking the paths or the neurons that I talked about before, which are sort of the roadways, the maps in your brain. And they can block some of those good, healthy pathways. So it's very important to recognize that illegal drugs can also affect brain. Another area that people don't talk a lot about is depression. Depression in general just makes people not have can create a little bit of a loss of those good neurons in helping to process things in the brain. And basically they get sort of what I guess I sometimes refer to as fuzzy brain. And they just can't process very well because they're depressed and they just don't want to think anymore because it's painful. So if you recognize that you or a loved one has depression symptoms, obviously you want to take action on that. Peggy, in addition, there's some other specific medical conditions that are pretty easily identified and addressed. Things like vitamin B deficiency, especially in older individuals, although that can also happen in younger people. Thyroid disorders. And one that is overlooked very often is urinary tract infections and dehydration. As a nurse and having worked in an emergency room, very often we would see especially elder individuals coming in who are all of a sudden develop confusion or don't seem to be able to process very well. And after we do our evaluations, very often we'll notice that there may be a urinary tract infection. But sometimes one of the first signs is sort of confusion or some issues surrounding memory. Certainly, another area is low blood count or being iron deficient. Again, simple blood test. Most physicians do these kinds of tests regularly when you go in for your physical. But if you're not causing iron deficiency or a low blood count, which is again because you have a reduction in your iron, the blood helps to transport the oxygen, which is basically the food and the fuel for your brain. So if there isn't enough of that, then that really does create some problems for the brain. The one thing that I think we did not talk about earlier and that can really affect you also that isn't specific to what we've already addressed is trauma. If someone was involved in a head injury, whether in a car accident or a simple fall, there could be permanent loss of memory depending on where it's affected. Again, I know we're not talking specifically about types of trauma injuries, but again, it depends on where the brain is affected. Whenever there is a head injury, and if there's any confusion or apparent confusion, it is very important to seek medical help. So I would always say that.
Now, what about, let's say you're a college student pulling an all-nighter. You don't sleep the whole night, and then you have to remember everything the next day. What's going to happen there?
Well, I guess just think about yourself. If
I don't
you...
do well.
All right, well, think about somebody else then. Let's say a new mom who is up every 2 to 4 hours during the night. Most new moms say, I'm exhausted, I can't think, I can't function. In essence, Peggy, that's what happens. They just don't have that restorative opportunity for their brains to relax and reprocess, and so they actually, they're exhausted. So it's really, really important to, take that break and get proper sleep.
Okay. I guess one of the other things I'm thinking of, I guess, for disorders is Alzheimer's, of course, right?
Alzheimer's is a form of dementia, and again, there's different stages of dementia. There is, mild cognitive dementia. There's, Alzheimer's disease, which again, unfortunately, can only really be diagnosed 100% after death. But, it is something that robs us of our memory. That is the far end of the spectrum. What we're really talking about today is recognizing the early signs and of problems, and then seeking medical care when necessary for some of those things. So.
Okay, so let's say we have a friend or a loved one that isn't remembering very well. She doesn't know the last time she went to the grocery store. She doesn't know if she has fresh fruit in her kitchen.
Right.
At what point does one have to intervene?
That's a really good question, and it's a very clear statement. The bottom line is, when your memory begins to affect you or your loved ones and begins to have consequences.
Okay.
And as an example, again, that may be a little hard to put your hands around, but in other words, let's say you miss your husband's birthday or misses your anniversary date that you know every year for 20 years has been remembered.
Okay.
There's a consequence there for you, because they think, do you not love me anymore? Did you just forget about me? It can be something like your weekly card game that you go to every week, that you've been going to for 20 years with your longtime friends, and you meet every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, but all of a sudden you're not showing up. There's a consequence to that. There can certainly be a simple, correctable reason for that, but it's important to recognize that it's beginning to have some consequences, and then you need to get to the bottom of that. Again, it could be as simple as that there's a medication change that needs to happen, an infection, or something like that.
Yeah, I guess it's not just about where are my car keys. It's,
No.
if you lose your way when you're trying to go somewhere and you don't know where you are,
Right.
that has consequences, right?
Right, it does. I could spend 20 minutes in the morning trying to remember where I put my keys, and what my husband says is put them in the same place every night. He's a very smart man. So some of those things that we do, it is very important to talk about. We need to write things down. We need to put our keys or our glasses wherever in the same place. That helps prompt us. Again, it goes back to that repetition, that repetition piece.
Routine, yes.
Yeah, that routine. We can repeat things back. Let's say we go to a doctor and we're hearing the physician speak to us, or the other medical provider, and we try to listen closely, but if we write it down, or repeat it back to them to make sure we really heard what we thought we heard. Those are all very, very important things.
Hopefully we'll have a healthcare provider that has the patience to allow us to do that, right?
Exactly. The other thing is reviewing your notes later at the soonest possible opportunity after you're done writing them. Review them again. Sort of put them into your brain. Again, that's that part of consolidation and encoding that we talked about earlier. Also, especially for older adults, it's about focusing on one thing at a time. We all hear that term multitasking, and we all have to do it on a regular basis, but it's important, especially for older adults, to look at one thing at a time. We've done the multitasking when we were younger. Now it's time to concentrate on one thing so you can really get it ingrained into your brain.
Okay, so a review would be listen, repeat, review, and focus.
Yes, absolutely.
I can't tell you, as the consumer health librarian here, how many times I get somebody that goes to their physician, the physician tells them something, and it's kind of lost.
Right.
If you're nervous about what they're saying, you're not going to remember a lot, are you? And then they come to me and say, can you tell me a little bit more about what this doctor told me? If they follow those steps, I think they might be okay.
Absolutely.
So, Kristine, guidelines for improvement. Can you talk about those, please?
Absolutely, Peggy. Well, I'm going to start with where we just left off. Pay attention. There really is the importance of focusing is so important to our ability to remember. I think about the car keys. If you walk in the door and the dog is barking, the phone is ringing, you've left the window open, and you throw your keys down because you need to start taking care of these things, and it's not where you normally hang them. But if you take those few seconds to go, okay, I know I'm putting my keys down in a place where I never put them, but I've got to take care of these other things. 3 hours later, when you have to get back in the car and go out, you may go to your hangar and go, where? But then you'll remember because you took those few moments and you focused, you paid attention to what you were doing.
Okay.
So that really is an important one. Also, identifying what your learning style is can be a great help in aiding with taking in new knowledge, learning a new skill. Some people learn really best by visually, by looking, by seeing. Other people learn better by hearing, auditory. And some people learn best by doing. They're kinesthetic learners. So it's, to pay a little bit of attention to what your learning style is. This can really help you take in new information and keep it, really learn it well and be able to, recall it when you need it. Okay. Also, not being afraid to really organize information and figure out what is your best style of organizing. But things like keeping an address book, having a date book, having a calendar, maybe a visual calendar where you organize all of your dates and information and those kinds of things. Taking notes, Marie mentioned that, but not to be afraid to take notes on more complex material that you actually keep in a notebook. I mean, I do that with for my computer skills. I don't remember this stuff really well, so I take notes and I have a 3-ring binder where I can always go and prompt myself.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that.
The thing that makes me nervous, though, as a teacher, too, because I teach in the library, is that if you're taking notes, it's almost like your ears are blocked off from hearing what I'm saying at that time. So taking notes is good.
That's true. That's true.
You have to know your learning style to know what works for you.
Absolutely. And it really it cycles back to knowing about yourself. I mean, I know that what works for me about taking notes is to really be engaged in doing the skill and then just jotting down what is it about this that I'm doing right now that I need to jot down because I won't remember. So, it's I know what you're saying. You've got to be able to still be taking in information and understand what is it that I have to get down here that's going to help with my memory process. I get a sense.
Yeah,
do you have something to add
absolutely.
to that?
I think
Good.
the only other thing is, especially for older adults who are going to a physician and maybe getting either good or sometimes not so good information, and there's a lot to absorb, is taking a friend. The point that you made about taking notes sometimes eliminates you from listening to the instructor or the doctor. Bring a friend, let them take the notes. Again, then you can concentrate on listening to the physician, your friend can take notes, and then you can review things later on to make sure that you all heard the same message.
Right. And I think my teaching style, do you find that, I teach computer classes, so what I usually say is, first of all, I kind of gauge my students. If I think that they're not really catching the more advanced things that I'm talking about, I kind of bring it down a little bit and simplify everything. And then at the end, I say, if you need to take this class again, you can sign up again.
Well, and that's
review, repeat in their mind.
Yes.
And most of them sign up 2 or 3 times.
Sure.
Well, Peggy,
so get it.
Yes. Well, and that's interesting that you say that because that was another guideline that I was even going to mention was focus on the basics. Focus on basics first and build from there. And really understand that you are building from there to gain knowledge.
Okay. Now, what are the healthy habits that we can do on a regular basis that can keep our memory excellent or the best that it can be?
I love talking about these because they're really these things that I'm going to mention, these habits that I'm going to mention, are habits that we can do, and they have been proven to make a difference in our in the health of our memory and our brains. Exercise, I'll talk about first of all. There's an increase in oxygen to the brain when we exercise. It reduces our risk for disorders that really create memory problems, things like diabetes, cardiovascular disease. Exercise also it enhances the effects of our brain chemicals. All of that good stuff going on in the brain. Serotonin is one. by exercising, it increases the positive effects of those chemicals in our brain. So exercise is a big one.
I think it decreases stress
and
in my life. And when stress isn't there, I think you're going to retain more.
Absolutely, and stress management is another healthy habit, and certainly exercise is one means towards stress management, absolutely. Cortisol is a stress hormone that can build up in our system when we're stressed out, and they have proven, they have seen that over time, if there is a buildup of that stress hormone, that's what can really affect the hippocampus very negatively. So you want to keep yourself as stress-free as possible, and and to find the ways. Again, really kind of finding what works for you. You just said for you, exercise. Exercise is a great stress reducer. Marie and I were talking yesterday about in these really difficult times in our world, and so much going on, going on with the economics in this country, and people sometimes listen to the news loops over and over throughout a day, and this creates stress. So it's, even understanding when's the time to turn off the news.
I think
turn off the news.
That causes depression in people. The depression rates are going to increase, and memory is going to decrease.
It really can have a negative effect. So, yes, whatever you can do to minimize stress in your life, it's very important to the health of memory and brain function. Good nutrition, eating a healthy diet rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains. These really have been shown to improve our memory. Specifically, the B vitamins and folic acid, they're involved in making the red blood cells that carry oxygen to our brain.
Okay.
Good sources for these are the dark leafy vegetables, strawberries, which I'm happy to report. Many people love strawberries, legumes, soybeans, things like that.
Okay.
Really good for healthy brain function. And then also sleep. We've touched on that a little bit. Right. Really important to get a good night's sleep for optimum healthy brain function.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, and then lastly, what kind of things, I know that I love to do Sudoku. What are the things that you think somebody can do to enhance their memory?
Well, there's a lot of things. And again, just to touch on a few, do things that require you to do complex thought processes, like chess, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, something I cannot do. Bridge, right, that's a good one. Learning a language. Basically keeping your mind healthy and active, continuing to do what you need to do. Computer games, there is a lot of games out right now. I think Nintendo, I probably shouldn't be mentioning specific brands, but there is a computer game that's actually geared specifically for increasing brain fitness for seniors.
Yeah,
so it's wonderful, yes. And simple things you can do is counting by 3s or 4s. So going 3, 6, 9, and on. I'm not going to go any farther to keep our brains active. Learning to do something new. Again, continuing to learn as we age. We don't ever stop learning. We just may take a little more time to actually learn it. And then again, that keeps our brains active and healthy. And the most wonderful activity that especially seniors can do that has a lot of different processes for our brain health is ballroom dancing, or dance in general. And that's because it requires the thought process of what step will you do after the one you've finished. So it's a process that you have to follow. It's helping to gain cues from your partner or dance partners, and also keeping a beat, and you have to focus really on just one thing. It really helps to improve our cognitive abilities. So things like line dancing, things like Zumba Gold, which MVP Healthcare is teaching in the community, a number of programs like that. Get out and do something, and they're a lot of fun to do, and these are just a few examples to keep your brains healthy and your memory alive.
Great. And one of the things that we haven't mentioned yet is that we're actually doing a shortened version of a program that MVP Healthcare offers for free to anybody that wants to attend. Can you, can one of you just mention some of the other offerings that MVP Healthcare gives the community?
Well, we have a number of different kinds of programs. This is part of our presentation programming, and we offer all different kinds of topics, nutrition topics, topics on sleep, on
general health.
just kind of all general health and wellness topics, where it's a little bit more of a presentational situation. But we also offer a number of ongoing fitness classes in the community. We offer Zumba Gold classes, dance moves, which is swing dancing and jazz dancing, things like that. So we also sponsor 3 mall walking clubs in the area. So there are a number of programs to choose from.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to do 3 more shows. And we're going to be doing, so we already did memory, we're going to do sleep, we're going to do partnering with your healthcare provider.
Correct.
And we're going to do fall prevention, which I think is also really important. All right, just to wrap up, can we give a website for MVP Healthcare?
Well, the website is mvphealthcare.com.
Okay.
And
I would say yes, anybody who is interested in knowing more about all of our presentation topics and the ongoing fitness programs in the area, they can call me directly, Kristine Lindahl, at area code 518-388-2485.
Okay. Thanks for coming in.
Peggy, thanks for inviting us.
Thank you, Peggy.
It was wonderful.
Thanks for watching. We hope to see you next time on Focus on Health.